Oh, there she is.
I do not believe we have Brandon tonight. So we'll,
Yeah.
if there's issues that need him, we can cross that bridge or, okay.
All right. Should we go ahead and call the meeting to order? Close enough. Maria, would you do the roll call, please? Chair Schwartz. Present. Vice Chair Evers.
Present.
Commissioner Brightstaff.
Present.
Commissioner Scott. Present. Commissioner Jacobs. Commissioner Wingard.
Present.
And Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Great, so we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Great, any discussion? All in favor? All right, unanimously passes. Thank you. This is a time for any just audience business, general kind of audience business, unrelated to the public hearing topics. And I'm gonna assume our guests online are waiting for the public hearing, so we'll go ahead and move to that part of our agenda. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
As you may have heard, I've been asked to serve on the Board of Trustees. I'm delighted to be headed in that direction starting on Monday, where it seems very likely that the board will hear the two central items on our agenda this evening.
Yes.
I had hoped to spend another evening on the PCBC, but on advice of counsel, since you have a quorum and I shouldn't hear the same issues twice.
Yes.
I'm told that I would be better off resigning my post on the BCBC now and allowing all of you to take the helm on those issues without my input, and then I'll see them later.
Yes.
So I will officially resign, just thanking all of you for working alongside me for the 10 minutes I was able. It feels like, I think it was 1 or 2, and maybe this was the like 2.1 meeting. I'm sorry to leave you after having promised to help out, but I'll try to help out someone else.
Thank you for everything
Yes.
you've done.
Yes.
Up to now, or in so many ways, so.
Yes.
I'm off to the fire station.
All right.
Please.
All right,
Thank
care.
you so
Take
much.
care all.
see you next week.
Commissioner Williams. All right.
Okay,
We'll go ahead and move to the first public hearing related to resolution 2025-17. A resolution of the Town of Lyons Planning and Community Development Commission recommending an amendment to the Lyons Municipal Code, Chapter 16, Article 9, to allow feather banners. Yes, Lisa, would you please present the staff reports?
sure. So let me get this pulled up here. So yeah, first item of business up for tonight. Here we go, is a really targeted sign code amendment, related to consideration of feather banners. So this came about upon request of the Economic Vitality Commission, to our Board of Trustees. The EBC discussed this at their meeting back in July and developed a recommendation for consideration by the board. The board, essentially kind of accepted that recommendation with, recognizing we needed to get a recommendation from PCDC staff and the town attorney, made a few little minor tweaks to EBC's recommendation, which you might notice in the differences in the packet. But just want to note currently, we don't have a category for feather banners in our code. We do have a category called wind signs, and none of these signs have definitions either. So kind of using common Google searches, stuff. And I think this has been the consistent interpretation of the code over the past years, is that feather banners through kind of this prohibition on wind signs means they're not allowed. Therefore, we are creating a new sign type called a feather banner, and in an effort to allow this in line with the Economic Vitality Commission's recommendation. I also really want to note that our sign code is in need of probably a comprehensive overhaul. There's elements in the sign code that are no longer consistent with federal case law. And so we acknowledge that is not, this targeted amendment is not fixing that. However, until staff has time to do more of a survey of our built environment, do some research into modern sign trends, obviously resident and business engagement, we're going to hold off on doing that full amendment. So this is just kind of a very targeted amendment. So just want to disclose that. So the packet contains the draft ordinance, but it is fairly brief, as I mentioned, so I've just kind of copy pasted it on here. Essentially, each licensed business located in any of the commercial zone districts could have 2 temporary signs that do not require a sign permit, a feather banner sign and a sandwich board sign. Sandwich board signs are already permitted, so that standard is not changing. And then we go through all of these following restrictions. Essentially, they need to be kind of maintained well. Would not require a permit, and unlimited days of the year. We talked a lot about that at EBC. Do we want to limit these to maybe 60 days or 90 days? And we kind of figured the requirement for tracking days, just logistically, could be challenging. So we settled on making sure that the sign is brought in at the end of every business day. Then hopefully the business owner would recognize when the sign becomes in disrepair, and it's kind of an intentional act to place it out there. No illumination, 16 square feet. Let's see. Cannot be attached to utility pole, cannot impede pedestrian or vehicular travel. One thing that we did change from EBC's recommendation is the last banner, which basically says, or the last bullet point, which basically says if it's on private property, they don't need a permit. They can place it kind of wherever. If they want to put it on right of way, that they need to get a permit from the town. And really, this is, Dave Cosgrove handed this to me, and this is the thing that gets jabbed in the ground that typically holds up feather banners. And oftentimes when people put them up in a manner inconsistent with our code, they'll destroy an irrigation line, which if you feel how heavy this is, you'd see. So we're not opposed to them being in the right of way. We just want the opportunity for our utilities folks to go out and say here, not here. So we would allow it through a sign permit. So, and then really anywhere through town. There was some discussion about whether or not they should be, you know, kind of in downtown or not downtown or everywhere else. So really curious to hear from PCDC if, you know, again, the restriction of 1, if this should be a town-wide allowance. So just kind of all your thoughts related to these in general. And that's really all I have for you related to this. So happy to answer questions or hear your thoughts.
Commissioners, I think it might, well, I live next door, I know she's still the president of the garden club, or she's part of the garden club, and they bought a bunch of feather signs for their annual garden in June. She's storing them at her house. Anyways, it's a good example where they have them all around town. And I don't know if they were, I don't know if they used them this last summer, and I usually go every June and put my bike in. But that's an example of, that's a nonprofit raises funds for the town, and
So that's it. Yeah.
and so they're all private owners with their gardens. Or actually, there was the public gardens, actually, there's a little bit breaking out there, but the garden club was operating all of those, are managing, when they manage them all themselves.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, and I know they want people to know where the properties are. So, and most of the properties are private, so they could put on their own property and not in the right of way, but.
Well, so this ordinance as drafted would only allow them on commercially zoned properties, right? So oftentimes,
Okay.
so this ordinance would not accommodate that.
Okay.
That being said, you know, if they're up for 24 hours in advance of an event, the likelihood that the town staff is gonna organize itself to do something about it is not high, especially on a weekend.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, but I mean, and often we often see temporary signs go up on a really short-term basis. I think about like open house signs from
Right.
estate agents, and I think that is probably, we can certainly talk about that as part of this. If we're not ready to go there, that would be, I would guess, a good community-wide conversation when we do a comprehensive update of the sign code. But just to be clear, that would not be accommodated.
That's a good example. And I'm not sure if they kept, because when I went around, I'm not sure, did they even, are they still there when I was there? I don't know.
Commissioner Drysdale?
Yeah, I had, two questions. One was very similar,
Mhm.
to Commissioner Scott's, but the other question was, would this be a completely administrative function?
Yes,
Which is good,
and effectively no permit even required.
right?
Right,
Just,
so-
Notification and,
They could just
Sure.
place these up and as we see them, I think we would communicate the new ordinance as it gets adopted, should it get adopted, and then would work with the business owners, but ongoing basis, we do not want to require a permit. Just capacity and,
yeah, which is good.
Okay.
So it minimizes the bureaucracy.
yes.
But the other question is, I'm thinking there may be some relatively simple language
Okay.
that could enable not-for-profits to use signs for fundraisers, for example. Even, for example, the hootenanny that's coming up, you know, that sort of thing. LCF, Lions Community Theater, the Garden Club, you know, there are a host of organizations that likely have a banner already and would want to use it, and it's not their, normally not their property that they're
Mhm.
adjacent to or in front of, and it's not technically a service or a good that's
Yep.
being provided, so even a phrase such as and Colorado nonprofit corporations with approval of townspeople.
Yeah, I'm thinking of something like, I think that's a great discussion point for you all. We can't necessarily regulate the content that's on it to say like, you know, but I do think like with permission of a property owner, either like town sponsored events or certain limited exceptions. So I can work with the town attorney if on the kind of how we would actually craft that language, but certainly open to input from all of you on how to maybe target that allowance if it needs targeted, or kind of how you'd like to refine that. But I do think that's a good suggestion.
Commissioner Myers?
I have a safety question, of course. In my experience, not just with these signs, but others, when I was reading through the packet, I didn't notice if we had anything about impeding line of sight from driveways. So that has been a problem since we changed our traffic and our parking pattern here on the main highway of death.
Yeah,
That
you'll
would be
see
something,
the second to last bullet. Feather banner does not impede pedestrian or vehicular travel, and that's not, there's some discretion there, and shall not be located in the sight distance triangle or block visibility to an official traffic sign. So we can tighten that language up. To me, I feel like it gives us discretion to make a determination if it's a problem or not, but certainly open to input if that needs further clarification.
And that could be complaint driven as well.
Totally. Something that we could go
So
investigate.
some, you know, somewhere there would be instructions on how to file a complaint about it, so it could be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and we have a few stop signs that need trees trimmed back from too, but
Sure.
different ordinance.
Yeah.
Commissioner Evans? Any comment?
No, clarifying questions. Just ask.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's maybe that requested. I mean, I do agree to exclude the nonprofits. One might be,
Mhm.
it might be here again in a couple of months.
I think that's a reasonable thing, right?
It's a little bit of time, sure. We are very, you know, I don't know. Community that. You know, there's a couple of town events and. Community foundation, maybe there's some regular traditions that I think.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, the feather banner has a different purpose than a sandwich board sign. I think a sandwich board sign is very clearly pedestrian oriented, right? It's usually placed right next to the sidewalk. You're not gonna read what's on it at all if you're driving in the car unless you're stopped at a stop sign,
One
maybe.
that goes like that.
Yeah, it's a little A-frame sign,
Okay,
that
okay.
usually, you know, maybe
Yeah.
4 feet high. Whereas I think the feather banners are definitely geared more toward vehicular visibility, right? They're taller, they're usually a little designed to catch attention. I think they're, you know, alternatively, I think some communities these have not been allowed for really specific aesthetic reasons, right? So, and I think that's why the EBC recommended the cap of one per business, so you don't kind of see a proliferation or like the rows and rows and rows of them. So I think from staff's perspective, they're, mixed opinions, I think, as to whether or not they're appropriate in all parts of town, but certainly curious to from you all too. But
So the other question that follows on with that though is, do the rest of the rules apply to not-for-profit? For example, how tall and that sort of thing?
yeah, well,
How do we come down?
So generally, when you're regulating signs, you think about three concepts: time, place, and manner. So you couldn't say a commercial business necessarily on the same property could have a sign this big, but a nonprofit could only have a sign this big. But if it's in a residential neighborhood, because that's a different place, you could say feather banners. We can regulate feather banners completely differently and maybe a different place, or again, time, place, and manner. So those are just some concepts to think about when we want to regulate signs. Right?
Is there a particular use case that's kind of, that you're aware of, you could share with us, that's like making this an urgent or relatively urgent?
Why this came up?
Why is it coming up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So this came up because there were a few local businesses that placed their feather banners up without not realizing. We're gonna assume they did not realize that they weren't permitted. So code enforcement contacted them, they removed the feather banners, but said, hey, I just invested in these. Who do I need to talk to about allowing these in the town? And so that then prompted them to connect with the Economic Vitality Commission, who discussed it as a group. So that is kind of how this arose. The Economic Vitality staff met with Economic Vitality just to kind of talk about different options on regulatory language, not necessarily taking a position. But and then EBC through their chair presented this to the board. I believe it was on July 21st. And then board directed staff to prepare an ordinance as quickly as possible.
That's good. Just curious, if there's some reason why we wouldn't wait for a more overhaul of this thing.
No, and I think they recognize that summer is kind of the highest season of our economic activity, and so to get it through as quickly as possible with whatever is left of the summer season and some prioritization of enforcement in the meantime. So you'll probably see maybe a few more go up out there that maybe didn't used to be.
So is that the only instrument so basically what I'm saying is you can't have shove that in the ground as a sidewalk on Main Street.
No, so that's where we would that's why the allowance of like in the right of way, so in a tree lawn, that is not the only way you could mount it, right? I think
So you
people they could do like a weighted stand potentially. I think there's a lot of things, but these again are something that
Okay.
Well,
that are,
Personal.
plus it's about 14 inches long, right?
Yeah.
Which is the critical depth for other underground things like the water and electric.
Is that what it is, 14 inches?
And you wouldn't pull this out every night.
No.
Because then you'd have a giant hole.
exactly.
You would
So,
leave this
yeah.
in and pop the top off.
Yes. Yep. I think that's the thought, is if the town staff would work with the business owner to say, here is fine, and then they bring it in every night.
I think it's a no, but there's no further definition of what a feather banner is besides this exempt signs.
No, and again, there's no definitions in our code. I could certainly try and create one if we want to include a definition, just to be really clear if there's something you want to prevent.
I don't
I,
know. Like architecturally, they're like, we have to design around, I think, 160 mile per hour ultimate wind velocity. And like,
Yeah.
a fabric sign, no problem, but if someone made something out of sheet metal, that
Mm.
goes wind blown, like it could cause problems. So
I think adding a clarifier, there's still the projectile potentially of what it's getting attached to.
Yeah, because I always thought, you see them a lot at like new developments,
banner,
new housing developments, I see these a lot. These people
Oh,
put up,
yes.
you're driving around, that's where they catch your idea, like, I mean, oh, buy a house here and they want you to pull over
Well,
and check it.
the reason I ask is even those realtor signs, like the ones you can buy at the sign shop that have a piece of sheet metal in it, they're screwed into a metal frame, wind will blow those out of their frames.
Okay.
Well, item F on, here
Yeah.
gives the town the ability to prevent that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And to me, it's broad enough to have the authority to prevent it.
okay.
But it's not, it doesn't get into such detail that, start to argue about what's.
Was it a feather banner if it's made out of metal?
Yeah, so that's what that was my understanding with the feather that.
I can add the word fabric to the definite, like to the description of it. I think like a fabric feather banner shall be permitted, like we can add that clarifier if you think,
When I read the packet, and I just saw the title Feather Banner, I was like, what is that?
Let's put the picture, yeah.
Okay. We can certainly put
The
some
description of. the end.
description in there.
Yeah, I think
This came up before though, right? When we talked about
it's
that.
not like the guys that go up and down.
No, and that's why we're leaving wind signs as exempt, so that I think that like, I know, the giant gorilla on the top of a roof or, yeah, other inflatables.
Sorry.
Oh, those are the, what are those called? Oh, what are those? Oh.
And then there's like the guy with the wavy arm.
Yeah, so I don't know what those are
Yeah.
called. Okay,
I
okay.
think,
Yeah, that's a marketing ploy thing.
Why
Well, I
don't,
guess
thank
they're
you for answering the question and clarifying a little
Yes.
bit about it. I think we can discuss it after
Okay.
motions.
yeah,
All right,
just want to be clear on procedure too.
Yes, please.
We first, the Board of Trustees considered this on first reading at their last meeting, again, in an effort to bring this through as quickly as possible. That being said, if PCDC wants more information, if they would like to see revisions come back to you all, we can certainly continue the board meeting when it comes back to them to give you all time. So it was not intended to rush you in any way, shape or form, but if you all felt comfortable with it, it allowed us to move it quickly. So just want to let you know that, no pressure.
any more questions? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. And if there's anyone joining online to provide public comment here, please let us know. Otherwise, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of resolution 17/2025 of the PCDC.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Winger. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think this is close enough that with some direction to staff for consideration with council, that we could, personally, I think we could probably move forward.
Yeah, I personally always thought that the banners were fabric, I almost like definition of figure out. But yeah, I don't know, but further clarification might help, yeah.
Because if we go down
Yeah,
the road of definitions
yeah,
and reading
Yeah.
through the
yeah,
the town code, oh my God.
yeah, okay, you got a point.
That's a rabbit hole.
I don't know.
So,
I mean, I think we heard two concerns that kind of nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
and the material of the banner, just from a safety perspective. Commissioner Evers?
is it? We're in the discussion of the
We're
motion,
in the
right? So
discussion of the
my only
motion.
reservation is, this is fairly personal, but I think sometimes it's appropriate to talk about in a volunteer commission meeting, because you represent, your constituents and the voice of your community. These things are kind of tacky.
Yeah,
I think the answer is probably yes, if a business needs to put a sign out to advertise what they're selling or the good that they have in order to attract attention from vehicles, I'd probably say yes, but I'm just. Personally, I really don't like these things, and I'd hate to see like 50 of them on Highway 36 as you go through town. That's just personal opinion, you take it or leave it.
maybe, or Brian and I might be thinking the same thing, but can we put a limit on how long you can have it out or something? Yeah, or something like that, cause I see, I can see where you're going with that, I mean, go ahead.
I actually, my thought is the market will take care of that.
Oh, okay,
I think the market will self-regulate that in that, I mean, a little bit like the building that got turned into a, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Uh,
I guess.
you know, it didn't last long, and, if it proliferates too much, then it's not unique, it doesn't do anything, people won't use them. If they're reasonably effective, and, my thought is there are some occasions where they would be effective. For example, if there's a sidewalk sale, or there are, special events going on in relation to it. You know, to me, I think there's a place for them. And I do think that the market will, to a degree, regulate the proliferation and, unsightliness of. But, I mean, I don't like them either, but at the same time. You know, the town has. For a long time fought the battle of. The town itself is not business friendly, it doesn't help businesses, it gets in the way and that sort of thing, whereas I think. You know, doing things that can help businesses and not be a barrier, is a good position.
If I may too, that question came up with the board, and one of the things they discussed was, for one, codes can be changed as easily as we're adding this, we can take it away. And two, if this could be a little bit of a trial, because if and when we do amend the sign code, which I'm hoping we can do personally within the next year, we could get some feedback from the community. How do you feel about these? Do we want to dial it back? So I think you have a couple different ways to remedy it if all of a sudden every business and you all are like, this is not what we wanted. Just a few thoughts there.
My hesitation too is like, I think the sandwich signs are for pedestrians and things like this are for cars, right? That's what the idea. Scale of people moving. I think one of the hardest things about Lions is we have so many people moving through, so much opportunity to grab.
Yeah.
Retail tax and business wealth from the people who pass through our town, that maybe we should just ignore how we feel personally about the signs. If they help somebody in a car see that they're selling something, that helps them stop. I think Barney's right, but.
And if it slows traffic,
That's reasonable.
There you go. What is that?
I do not disagree with any of these sentiments, and I think, Lisa, your kind of insight on this could be a trial, this isn't period, and if there's another round of oversight if need be. So the motion stands as presented,
So,
Well, with direction to staff.
the direction to staff.
yeah, so if you would, I'm kind of happy to read what I've heard. So add clarification that feather banners are fabric, so I can use that in the kind of intro to this. And then work with Brandon to see if we can craft an allowance for nonprofits to place one in conjunction with either town events or nonprofit activities, kind of in appropriate locations throughout town. Yeah. So we'll work on that. Any further clarifiers on that? Commissioner Drysdale? Okay,
I think
All right.
that's
All right, any further discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and go to vote. And the motion. All right, moving on to the second public hearing agenda item, which is resolution 2025-18, a resolution of the Town of Lyons Planning and Community Development Commission recommending the annexation of property located at 4497 Ute Highway. Lisa, would you like to give staff report?
yeah, I just want to note that the applicant is not present. I emailed him earlier today and then just now and have not gotten a response. So it's really at the PCDC's discretion, depending on kind of the direction of how this goes. Similar to the last item, this was noticed for the Board of Trustees on August 18th. However, again, no pressure, more information, legal questions of the applicant, if they're not available to answer them tonight, you all can certainly continue this to a date certain. So I don't want you to feel any pressure and certainly wish the applicant was here. to make statements on their own behalf, as I can only share, town behalf. We do have interested members of the public on the call, but technically they are not the applicant. So, I guess my first question would be, does PCDC want to kind of continue with at least an intro and then see where this goes? Or how are you feeling, I guess, at this moment?
Yes, Commissioner Dressler.
So question about the role of PCDC
Mhm.
in this type of review.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what my thought is from the past, and you can correct me, please. That the PCDC's role is just to make sure that the rules are followed, in effect. Right?
You are a recommending body on both the annexation and the zoning, so you're right, you're not the final decision maker. In addition to the procedure, I think making sure that the applications are in line with town policy, right, as required in the code, specifically comprehensive plan, which really is PCDC's purview, and any other kind of applicable policy. So, but yes, you are just a recommending body, not the final decision to make.
Well, and that, so in reviewing it, it's looking at the staff's analysis.
Mhm.
And unless there's some reason to doubt that, which I don't at all. Then if we read through it and we see that the conditions are satisfied. And there's no questionable discretion applied. And not that there isn't discretion applied, but that if there is, it's not questionable, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not concerning. Then the PCDC will have fulfilled its role. By recommending to the Board of Trustees that it appears to the PCDC that the application is compliant. So
That's correct. I think that's a fair statement, and there's no legal requirement that the applicant be present when the PCDC make a recommendation. I would say, if though you are making a recommendation with any conditions of approval or leaning toward a recommendation of denial, that we would do that with the applicant present. So it sounds to me like maybe you all are interested in at least starting this discussion, maybe seeing where it goes. And then I think should some issues of concern that would require either clarification from the applicant or kind of consultation, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I think that sounds right.
Okay,
Yep, if we can
Yep.
move forward with
Great.
the evidence in front of us, we will do that.
you betcha. I keep hearing noise out there.
So we'll go ahead then with the staff report.
Great, let me pull up my PowerPoint here. I made a joint presentation with both applications since they're effectively the same property and a concurrent application. So yeah, tonight you're here to consider a request for annexation and zoning of property. The property that we are discussing tonight here is shown in red. So it's located on the northwest corner of US 36 Highway 66 intersection, directly west of what we call Highland Drive. You may recall that the two properties immediately to the east were recently annexed in April by the town. We commonly call that the Tebow annexation. And the property is currently developed with one commercial structure that is vacant. You may recall that I believe it was last year or possibly in 2023, Boulder County rezoned all of the properties in this area to agricultural, rendering all the existing uses or this existing use non-conforming. This applicant does not wish to keep it a marijuana related business and switch it to general retail, which Boulder County determined was not eligible for continuation in the county. Therefore, they have requested annexation. So that's a little bit of the backstory on the property. Again, one commercial building. It's challenging. Well, I refer to this a little bit more in the staff report, but since we have this aerial image up, when we think about this property, generally, there's a lot of challenges that we're working through. For one, the size of the property is very small relative to the location of the structure itself. You access the site, either here through US 66 or kind of along here through Highland Drive. The parking on the east side is actually located on the Highland Drive right of way. And then when this intersection redevelops as part of the Tebow redevelopment, CDOT will be closing this access here off US 66 and consolidating access up here. So, in addition to that, it's hard to see with, let me pull this Highland Drive thing off here, so you can kind of see it. Just kind of want to show a little bit about what we're working through with the Tebow property. So Highland Drive is a 40-foot right of way. It's generally aligned with US 36 to the south, but not directly aligned. The Palmerton ditch actually runs, see what's my cursor, you all can't see my cursor. Palmerton ditch runs kind of diagonally across the intersection there, starting on the west side. And it daylights, you can kind of see that what appears to be a little bit of a hole in the middle of the intersection. I wish I could have a, do we have a pointer, Maria?
Right here.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, so the Palmerton ditch daylights right there and then goes back under Highland Drive and comes back out again there. And so Tebow right now is working with the traffic engineer and their civil engineer to work with CDOT and the town to come up with kind of their access and traffic study to determine the size of this future intersection that they will need for their development. And it will impact, again, access on this site. And again, a lot of collaboration with ditch companies. So I guess all that being said, redevelopment on this site or redevelopment of the Tebow property to the east is going to really impact access and the configuration once that finally gets designed for this lot. Another kind of challenge is Tebow's annexation agreement obligates them to bring utilities to the site, so water, sanitary, connections to town, electric. So they're, again, working through all of that. We expect that to take probably at least a year to kind of get through all that design with CDOT and again, utility design. This property owner, the annexation agreement, will require him to require them to connect into the utilities that Tebow brings to the site essentially at the same time. So once the mains are brought, then and the roads are open and construction's happening, then he'll have to connect his service lines at that time. But again, you go under the ditch, you know, over the ditch, how do you actually connect and bring utilities through to this site? So it's challenging and complicated. The draft annexation agreement, which really ties all these obligations and really connects these two annexations together, is not the purview of the PCDC, but I just say that to share with you again, just a little bit of the background and why you might not see physical change out there kind of anytime soon on the Tebow property, which then will inform kind of the obligations of this applicant to work with them. The Tebow annexation agreement also basically says they are responsible for all of the costs associated with developing the public improvements and improving that site. And then they get to negotiate with any future annexers, kind of how they want to divvy up costs. So we don't really have a role in determining that allocation of cost share or payback to the Tebow annexation. So the annexation application is relatively straightforward. It's going to be the construction of the site that's going to take some time. So just a little bit of background on annexation. Again, we're a statutory town. We follow the process set forth by the state. The first step on that was the board approving a resolution of substantial compliance, accepting the annexation application that happened on July 7th. And then again, the annexation agreement will connect to the Tebow agreement, but not really the purview of PCDC. However, as it relates to kind of either the appropriateness of the uses or just the appropriateness of annexing this property into the town and connection of utilities, certainly not off the table for discussion, just not your approval authority. So the staff report goes into a lot more detail. in the state statute, there are a number of criteria that have to be met in order to annex property. Some of them have to do with things like contiguity and relationship and location, size of property. This application certainly meets all technical criteria. In addition to the technical criteria, there's some planning and policy criteria, such as consistency with our comprehensive plan and the Boulder County Land Use IGA, Lyons Primary Planning Area. All of those documents reflect this property in kind of the planning area and eligible for annexation and align, and we can talk more about the uses when we get to zoning. So staff finds that this property is appropriate for annexation, albeit with the challenges discussed. So with that, we're recommending approval of Resolution 18. This is 2 applications, so 2 resolutions. The first one is the annexation. I'm happy to pause here if you have questions on the annexation itself, or if you want to kind of do this in conjunction, roll into the zoning and then talk about it all together with 2 votes. You all can tell me at this point kind of where you'd like to go.
What, should we just lump it all together?
Lump it all together.
All right, let's start, we'll do the whole thing and then we can kind of break it down from there if you'd like. So again, the next resolution is a paired application. So the property owner or the applicant requests zoning of the property to commercial east corridor, which is also the same zoning as the front portion of the Tebow property directly to the east. And it's really the zone district that was crafted with these types of, with this location in mind. State law and our code requires that properties are zoned when they're annexed. I believe we have 90 days, but essentially you typically do these concurrently. And then again, as I mentioned, there is one existing commercial structure located on the lot. Commissioner Schwartz was asking some questions about what the uses are that are in the CEC zone district. So once I get through these, I'll pull up that use chart too, just so you all can see kind of what's by right and what would require conditional or special review uses. Again, all of the criteria is in your staff report, the criteria that's set in our code. Staff finds that it meets all planning and policy criteria, particularly relationships with the comprehensive plan, Lyons Primary Planning Area. And again, the concept that this zone district was really established for this portion of town. And so this is taken from our comprehensive plan, this future land use consideration. They call this East St. Vrain area. So a mix of residential, commercial, and employment uses, with the highway frontage should be reserved for commercial uses. And so again, the CEC zoning really reflects, I think, that this is highway frontage. It's got high visibility, being right at the intersection, and appropriate for commercial zoning. So with that, we recommend approval of the coinciding resolution recommending approval of zoning the property to CEC. I will pull up the use chart for you. I can share my screen here and just talk a little bit about that. Essentially, the property in its current condition prior to operating a business in town, they will need to get a business license, including what we call a business license inspection, just to make sure that the property is in safe condition. But there wouldn't necessarily be a trigger to bring everything up to code just by virtue of being annexed. So we would do that at some point. Should they redevelop or do a minor redevelopment, everything would fall under our code for kind of the development review process. But again, the CEC zone district, some of the intent language is shared here, but I'm gonna, shoot, I don't think I can get it all.
This is the current zoning of the Tebow.
This is what the property that, the Tebow property has, the front portion of this, the rear has R3, the higher density residential, toward the rear. But, these would be the permitted uses, again, studios, galleries, bed and breakfast, daycare, event center, farmers market, banks, greenhouse plant nurseries, hospital, hotel, motel, light industrial uses, long-term care, medical dental offices, marijuana center. And so when we think about zoning, professional offices, you can see the list is quite extensive. And then we go on to use by special review. Special review requires an extra layer of review with public hearings. So some of these types of uses, we would get kind of a second bite at it. And really the intent of these is it may or may not be appropriate for this particular site, right? So it gives, these are some uses that might be fine for one site, but maybe not at all appropriate on another. And so we have different criteria for special review. So gas station would require that, for example, mini storage. So you can see this list here would require a second review, drive-through restaurants. And so, you know, while the applicant and the folks here tonight that may wish to speak intend, and they've shared this, intend to open a artist studio or gallery, when we think about zoning, we have to assume that potentially redevelopment or any other buyer in the future, any of these uses could be appropriate. And so, yeah, they have, you know, expressed their intent today, but we want to think long-term about the appropriateness of the zoning as a whole. So happy to answer any questions you might have on either annexation or zoning.
I had a question. Oh, sorry. A question about, the Island Ditch referral letter.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just inappropriate for land use discussion, but would that right away from Highland Ditch, which was, I think, says 60 feet on either side of the ditch.
I saw that too. I was wondering
One
if
sec.
that-
Would that preclude development? I guess what I'm wondering is like and maybe the agreements, these easements that the ditch companies have can be negotiated personally or privately with the developer, but if we annex this property, is it possible that that agreement would keep this from ever being developed, anything other than that building or an empty site?
So, I think the answer is possibly yes. I think with that particular referral, Highland Ditch is not the one directly closest to that. Just doing a quick Google image measurement of it, it appears that this building would be right around that 60 feet limit. So I don't know to the degree that particular letter or referral will impact to a large degree this development. That being said, the fact that the Palmerton ditch is running directly through that intersection, as you probably know, ditch companies generally have lots and lots of rights and abilities embedded in state law with the age of the water rights and the age of the ditches. And so staff is in the applicant, the Tebow applicant, have met with the Palmerton and the Rough and Ready, which are in much closer proximity to this property. And in fact, some of those ditches are actually in our Highland Drive right of way. So we have a lot of negotiating to do. And it potentially could impact future development. That being said, the Tebow property is already annexed, but I hear what you're saying, and I think to some degree, my understanding is the ditch companies generally will, what we heard from Palmerton and Rough and Ready is they want to react to a proposal that's a little bit more specific, because right now they have prescriptive non-recorded easements. And so I think it's, when I say it's a little bit of a negotiation, we're in a little bit of a chicken or an egg, like, okay, would you like this or this? And so we've got we're going back and forth. So the answer is yes, it could impact it. I think it's up to you all to know how much certainty you'd like before we would approve an annexation.
That's okay, just what is your take? That's perfect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would comment before they do that, I mean, because I know, you know, we have the ditch right along where the bike trail is going, I mean. That's just a trail, but you know, we have businesses that are close to them, I was wondering if they were in that 60 foot. That occurred to me when I saw that, I was like 60 feet, well, do we already have?
Oh,
How relevant are those, you know? Yeah.
we have definitely town improvements, private improvements that are within these easements. And again, I think it's really kind of a one-off negotiation at the time.
Property.
When the trail went in, I do know we had to, you know, execute ditch crossing agreements with the ditch companies in order to construct the trail and make the improvements across the ditch. I think the perception from town staff was that those went fairly smoothly and routinely. But this one's much more complicated.
So, um. So if we don't annex it, it remains in the county.
Yeah.
As agriculture,
Yes.
the probability of there being an agricultural application on that little piece of property. I guess maybe a chicken coop, I don't know, but probably minimal. Doesn't really do anything for the town.
Right.
So that not annexing it is sort of. Well, it's uncertain, but no. You know. Quickly determinable, kind of future for it,
Mhm.
whereas. For the town of Lyons, if it did annex, there are possibilities. Not, challenges,
Mhm.
but possibilities also. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think, right, we captured sales tax revenue potentially, right? We increase the intensity of the use. I think just in terms of risk, potentially moving forward, it's on well and septic. Right, the annexation agreement will obligate, you know, a different property owner should they decide not to develop or. Not to, you know, try and renegotiate that annexation agreement, you know, we potentially are annexing property. That we then. You know, have not necessarily assigned a right or a requirement to actually bring utilities to the site, so. I don't know that that's, you know. But we have other properties in town that are on septic systems, right? So I don't know that that's, you know, a terrible worst case scenario, but it does, you know, but yeah, I think. To your point, there are pros to more options for the property owner.
So the lack of a sewer connection is not an absolute barrier, it's a. It's a requirement, but there are, ways of addressing that requirement.
We have a path to satisfy that requirement to bring water and sewer to the site. It obligates a different property owner, which, you know, is a different set of issues. Should that property owner want to renegotiate or not follow through on their obligation, which potentially is bigger challenge than maybe this one property, so. But that is something that is fairly unique here in the way we sequence this.
There's no financial responsibility of the town to bring the utilities to a site.
The agreement will say the town will work in good faith, you know, kind of to acquire easements or work with all the entities, but we are not on that financially.
So, sure.
Whereas, there would be. Property tax in any event, even as a. Vacant property.
Mhm.
Wouldn't be a lot, but be something as opposed to not annexing it, which it would be nothing.
Commissioner Warner?
So. It's complicated with the Tebow and the ditch. So is the work that Tebow's going to do. Per those agreements, going to affect occupancy of this parcel? Directly, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of effect, right, especially.
You mean
if
access? What do you mean?
Access, right. It's
Yes.
For the access to this site,
Potentially, access will be reduced from what you see today.
just reduced.
I mean, they will have to provide access. In some,
If it's a business.
yeah. We will work and everybody's. You know, again, we didn't control the timing of this application. I think, you know, that's a risk potentially that this property owner is taking. With requesting to annex in advance of having those designs finalized. And certainly something that we have raised ourselves, but you're right, I think it's very safe to assume it will be reduced. We're really hopeful that there's a solution that works for everybody.
The link for the annexation impact report doesn't work.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Just curious if there's anything in there, from staff perspective that we.
my apologies for that. I did not check that link. It's fairly limited and in fact, it's not even required given the size of the property, but we did ask for one. Basically indicating, you know, moderate increase in potential sales tax revenues, no school enrollment given the commercial zoning. I can pull it up, but nothing of concern, I would say, in terms of impact to the town, given that they're obligated to bring the utilities.
Okay, any more questions, clarifying questions? Okay. Hearing none, and now that our
Public hearing?
applicant is not present, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And if there's anyone online who'd like to raise your hand or chime in. It's
Can I hear us online?
Yeah,
David and
Crystal.
Kathleen.
yeah. Lost it.
There should be a raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to make comments tonight. You can also email me if you're having technical problems and you're not sure what to do. We'll hold for a sec.
Okay.
There we go.
Here it is.
Hello. You're muted.
You're on mute, Crystal.
Hi.
Hi. Hey.
I don't really have any questions, nor do I feel like I have the propriety to ask questions as we're not the owners. But I do appreciate your consideration and given that this will be a nice addition for the town of Lyons, I no matter what it ends up being, I think it's going to be a golden intersection down the pike, with the junction of 36 and 66. Annexation seems to me to be prudent, no matter what this grows up to be. So I guess that's my 2 cents. David, do you have anything? No. So, do you have any questions for us?
At your discretion if you'd like to.
Pardon?
No.
No.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. We usually, sometimes, we don't usually take questions and answers, but this is a small group tonight and special.
Thank you.
event, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's our public comments. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And entertain a motion.
Want to do them separately?
Yes,
Yeah,
two separate motions.
to do that.
So I would motion to approve that number for annexing.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner.
Resolution 18, 2025.
I'll get it. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. All right. Any discussion?
Should have one other
Good
follow-up question for
question.
staff, sorry, I missed it earlier.
That's okay.
The Xcel Energy referral letter mentions a medium pressure gas line on Highland.
Yep, again, another complication in terms of,
Well, I didn't see it is it in the center of Highland? I didn't see it on the survey.
I didn't actually see it on the survey as well, so that was new to me and something that we'll have, we've shared these with the applicant, but I think with the civil engineers, dive into all of the utility design. I agree, it wasn't on any Alta or any of the surveys that I have seen yet today either, but at least they disclosed it and we'll work around it to the degree we can.
That's fine, just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, go ahead and move to vote. And this passes unanimously, thank you. And then the zoning, resolution 2025-19. I'll entertain a motion. Is that?
Do we need to end the public hearing?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah, let's just-
Yeah.
Yeah, 6:58, we'll open the public hearing for the rezoning. If there's any further public comments. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. 6:59. And, we'll entertain a motion for the rezoning.
I'll motion to rezone
Thank you.
to just to the CDC zone.
19-25, resolution 19-25.
Next.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Okay, any discussion here?
I think it'll be good for the town. I mean, in the art studio or the art. I mean, I think that's moved towards creating an activity center that's desirous. So
Yeah, I
good idea. I mean, there are lots of ideas, but I'm just saying, I think it moves the town and the art.
think people who've lived here a really long time have missed Glenn's greenhouse. It was like the welcoming when you got off 36 and had come flying.
I do like the connection of making some actionable progress on something in the comp plan. That feels good,
Progress.
so.
So, there has been over a long period of time, a little bit of controversy about the, CEC specific, zoning. And why shouldn't there be a commercial zone, everywhere? And I think it ended up being that we wanted there to be more opportunity out there, and that was where there was room for opportunity, doing things even on an even broader scale than anywhere within town. So while I do think at some point, someday, we should look back at our zoning in totality and perhaps simplify it overall. But at this point in time, the commercial eastern corridor does fit very long-standing planning objectives and the comp plan objectives that have been stated. So it seems to be consistent with that. And there are always going to be issues that have to be overcome, and that will take time, and they always take longer than you could ever possibly imagine. But you have to start somewhere. If you don't have the starting point, then you're not going to get it.
So well said. Thank you. All right, any last comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and go to votes. And it passes unanimously, thank you. All right.
All right. So moving on to general business item.
Well, we have minutes, so we.
Oh, sorry.
Agenda.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our last June meeting. We didn't meet in July or so. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
There's just one typo.
What was it?
Was it?
Oh, yep, just the second line of the approval of the agenda, yeah. Just fix it, spelling. Here. Good catch. Motion, isn't it?
I'll motion to approve the minutes with that minor. Very minor correction.
I'll go ahead and second that. Any discussion, anything else we missed? Okay, go ahead and vote on that, thank you. All right. And now we'll move to general business. Which is discussion of moratorium on the issuance of demolition permits in the historic downtown area. Thank you, Lisa, for your memo and do you have a staff report?
Just
for
real
us?
quickly, just a little bit of a summary. So this came at request of Mayor Rogan, to the Board of Trustees, and Mayor Rogan has had, some family issues, and so she's missed the last couple Board of Trustees meeting, and out of the board has determined over those last meetings that they preferred to wait till she was back in attendance, so they have been continuing this item for a number of meetings, but at the last meeting, the board, and again, in Mayor Rogan's absence, discussed getting a little bit more input and broadening this discussion before it comes back to them in the first meeting in September. So they requested that, ideally, what they would love to see is the EVC, Economic Vitality Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, and PCDC kind of discuss it as a group and then provide direction or input to your chair. And then they're gonna do the same, and then the chairs are gonna meet on August 27th to see if there's alignment or compromise or alternative suggestions for the board to consider on September 2nd. So really tonight, happy to answer any questions. But really, it's gonna be just kind of sharing your thoughts and input for Amy to then kind of negotiate and discuss with those other two commissions. So just for a little bit of background, the area under consideration as the ordinance is drafted is essentially that area outlined in black. So on High Street between 4th and 5th, and then along Main Street between 3rd and 5th, and then the two properties that are commercially zoned on the west side of 5th, so the Vintage Motors property, and then the train car, I don't know that has a common name around here or not, I don't know, that property. So that would be the area under consideration. In terms of a little bit of background, we established historic preservation regulations in 2021. We have the ability to both designate properties and districts. To date, the depot across the street here is the only local landmark, although we do have numerous properties on the state and national registers. Historic Preservation Commission is reviewing the town's first historic context report. And if you haven't had a chance to look at that or find that, I would really encourage you to do so. And I can also share that with you if you're interested. I found it super helpful. I don't know if it's final yet, but we can get you the draft. And again, local designation really provides the town the greatest oversight of changes and demolitions to historic properties. And as you know, the town has lost two structures in the historic downtown area, although the way the ordinance or the resolution for the demo moratorium is drafted, the unsafe structure could come down, right? Or at request by the Board of Trustees. So I think the mayor is attempting to kind of limit additional demolitions as a number of properties are for sale right now, to give ourselves time to think about different strategies on this. So again, Historic Preservation Commission would love to evaluate additional strategies around the creation of a historic district or additional criteria for changes to buildings within the historic downtown and the commercial design the commercial design standards for the downtown overlay, or possibly other strategies. So I don't think there's a predetermined outcome as a result of this moratorium. Really, it's just an opportunity to press pause. We don't lose anything in the meantime. Again, the moratorium is currently drafted with 8-month time frame. Staff thought 6 months would probably be a little aggressive. We didn't know that we would need a whole year. It prevents issuance of demolition permits. And again, that's the area covered by the moratorium. Any of these or all of these could be recommended for changes. Alternatively, maybe there's other ideas you all have. So with that, that's really just in terms of what we have for background. So just to open it up for your discussion and questions.
So can you just, the two buildings that we lost?
Yeah, so 402 Main Street, you'll see some, that was, the building at the corner of 4th and Main. And then the property where the future potential hotel site could go that is currently fenced with the hip little town everybody loves, I think, painted on the fence. So
Yeah, and I remember when we were here for the public hearing for that, the structure that they wanted to, they couldn't save the historic, they couldn't save it, they
Yeah.
just to build what they wanted to, but they structurally it couldn't be done to build a hotel there, yeah, so that was another, that was the issue behind that one.
comment. There are some buildings not within this frame
Absolutely,
that are of historic value.
absolutely.
And I was wondering if there could be some language, and I think it's actually, may not need the language because it's in the municipal code that empowers the Historic Preservation Commission, that the Historic Preservation Commission would recommend to the Board of Trustees to include in the moratorium. So it could be, you know, this area within downtown plus any specific properties recommended by the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, and I don't know how, again, you could lean on that historic context report, right? The properties identified in there, you could say any property that's listed on the state or national register. You could also just say any property with a, you know, kind of age of construction, pre whatever date, but you're right, that look, certainly the location of the area subject to a demolition moratorium could be expanded if we have concern for those two.
So just to divulge that I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission,
Oh,
and we didn't meet in July, we are meeting on August 20th.
I didn't know that.
So,
You have both hats.
yeah, so I was with Barney on the IGA before that, and so we all had talked about the same type of thing for a while. I guess one of the concerns is how long is the moratorium and what are the other outs? If the developer comes in that has really great ideas and really does want to do something downtown, I think that's where we're trying to find the balance, even with the HPC. Barney, you and I have talked about it before, about how the code says should, not shall,
Right.
lots of things, because some things are very cost prohibitive. And so are we just gonna shut good ideas out, or is there gonna be a mechanism to ensure that we're still getting approached if we have these properties for sale and some good idea comes to light?
So would that be as simple as enabling the Board of Trustees to waive requirements?
Yeah, I think, or have some kind of discussion, like another, I don't know how you would do it, but to get, like, I even wonder with the pit right now that they're filling in. Are they gonna keep that wall, brick wall? I mean, we all wonder, because we lived here a long time and we love the old stuff, but.
Yeah, the resolution is drafted, just, it includes kind of two outs. One is if the town, which would be town staff through a building official, determines the structure is unsafe, or by request of the Board of Trustees for good cause, right? And so the board could decide what good cause is. Again, creative application, something, you know, maybe it's, so we have a couple. And that would again only be for the period of while the moratorium's in effect, and then again, you know, any new code amendments or design regulations, historic preservation regulations could be developed during that time.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically of like there's an old dairy building that's out behind where the marijuana shop and Nick's old bookstore.
Oh, yeah.
Back up in there, and you know, there are a couple of really great historical structures that, you know, it might be good that the Historic Preservation Commission might designate a few of those to be also part of the
Part of the moratorium.
moratorium, or at least you know, not that there's high likelihood that that would be redeveloped, but at least, you know, recognizing that, you know, there are more properties in the overall entire town than downtown.
And then how will this get communicated to property owners if this comes into?
So town staff through our communications department emailed kind of everybody we had on file for like a business or business licenses, as well as through the whatever we had for both property owners and businesses a number of weeks back, that this was under consideration. So but if we modify the extent, then we would have to come up with a new strategy. But I think that would be something that, you know, again, the three groups, could talk about. And again, I think, you know, again, year of construction or, you know, some sort of maybe way of trying to predetermine which ones these are, because I also think about like if staff gets an application in potentially 3 months from now, we would want to know, you know, all demo permits or right, like kind of which properties in your mind have value.
And everyone, not everyone would agree. So what an
Yeah.
example for me, because my friends own the property, is the Smokin' Dave's cabin,
Mhm.
right? Historic. Does it have value? Not just me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of properties like that that are on the edge of. Beautiful.
But I think that the HPC has a fair number of criteria.
We do. And we've talked about a map even that goes on the web that people could explore and learn.
So right now, if I buy a property on Main Street that a big for sale, and I go in and say, I wanna demo this and build a whatever. There's nothing. No guardrails that would prohibit, like,
Not
why would
local.
you deny me?
There would be no basis for denial, and I think that's kind of the point from where the mayor is coming from and HPC too, to some degree, where like, let's pause the ability to do that while collectively as a community, we talk about any additional strategies that we'd like to get on the books while we have that conversation.
I'm just gonna, from a, you know, a little bit of development experience I have, moratorium is strong.
Yep.
Works.
Strong.
And it's gonna take you at least twice the time of the actual moratorium to get.
8 months would be
People over.
aggressive, yeah.
So that's, you know, 16 months till you actually get people wanting to come back here and like, to get their interest again.
And I think that's where EBC, and I think that's why the board requested kind of the three of you get together, because EBC, I think, is expressing an opinion similar to that, which is, how is this business friendly? What is this gonna do to our potential developments in downtown or our reputation for being, you know, development friendly or open to development? So again, to the degree there's a compromise in there, I think that the board is interested in doing that.
Maybe we just approved feather banners. To help generate business, you know, a moratorium, it just seems, and I'm not, please don't hear, I'm opposed to preserving historic buildings. But like that, to go in and buy a property, to say I'm interested in a property. Get to a closing, then get your plans together for what you wanna do to actually submit a demo permit, that takes at least 8 months. So I'm just a little bit.
I don't disagree with that. That being said, and we are also want to disclose, town staff's not been approached with like inquiries on how to pull a demo permit for any of these properties, so we're not aware of anything imminent. Again, this was at the request of the mayor, and I think frankly, this was the conversation that the Board of Trustees was having, and I think really out of deference to her, in her request, they elected to postpone it to have the discussion, but I don't know that there were the votes. If you go back and listen to those meetings at the Board of Trustees, it wasn't evident to me that there were the votes to pass it. And also, you don't need a moratorium, as you know, to have the policy discussion around should we create a historic district, or should we beef up our standards, or should we put some of these other requirements in place, right? So you don't have to do that in order to do the next step. So all reasons why they wanted to hear from you all.
I guess for me, I guess you talked about the two holes we ever had, both of those weren't. And one was a fire that was unintentional, and the other, the structure, they wanted to keep it, but a structural issue doesn't allow them to, so it wasn't out of respect of losing a property because they weren't trying, or.
Agreed, yeah, the moratorium wouldn't cover these two.
Yeah, exactly, and so I'm not, the urgency of it, I'm just, well, I mean, I guess it does say here in the history that the last few years. The town has approved demolition for properties downtown due to dangerous conditions. So, there's more of an urgency than I recognize, but. That's just. Privacy.
Any thoughts you all want me to carry forward?
Well, did I make it difficult?
Well, I mean, yeah, so we're meeting, HPC is on the 20th, but
The chairs
you
are
guys,
meeting on the
I would ask
27th.
us to read the report.
Yeah, let's
that
read
we
it.
have done that. Time to get it right. You have a contractor do it. And then look at the list, especially, you know, those things that aren't on the list, but, you know, look at the map and say, oh yeah, well, why aren't these other ones on that? I guess it's worth having a conversation, and I have talked to Holly, so I know that this is something she's been thinking about.
And we did talk to the town attorney, like, is there a way we could just administratively not issue a demo permit? Right, if someone applies, and
Yeah.
again, not really, if they
Not
submit a complete application. We couldn't sit on it for a long enough period, we could, you know, slow walk it a little bit, maybe in a matter of weeks, but we would not have the authority to not issue it, so. The recommendation from the town attorney was if you don't want to issue them, you place a moratorium.
And we don't have building coverage limits or really reasonable height limits in those are residential areas, so like someone can come in and buy half a block, erect giant donut buildings made out of steel and glass, but we don't have a moratorium on that either. 'Cause
Correct.
I don't see, I kind of agree with you, the timeline seems a little vague, like it doesn't really matter, so like. But I don't understand the piece about signaling to developers that a moratorium means go away. Is that what you said, kind of?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I've got my pipeline, you know, and I'm like, okay, watching what's happening, or even if I'm a smaller, you know, and they're gonna go moratorium, I'm gonna go to a place where they wanna work with me. Hard enough, and it costs money, so now, I mean, I don't know, I'm curious about the person who owns that property for sale right now too, like, you know, now they're having to pay the. It's a barrier for them to sell their property,
Yeah.
They lose leverage and negotiate the price.
and now they gotta sit there for 8 months, and basically. You could say not for sale for, you know, I mean, unless they're gonna just reuse the existing structure, which maybe that's the strategy and that would be fine, but. I don't know, it's just,
So what we're talking about is demo.
right,
So. You're familiar with the commercial design guidelines that apply to downtown,
Right.
they're pretty. Encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
so that, you know, unless you're going to, you know, demo, and then it becomes a question of what's the definition of demo? Is it just taking down a wall within building, or is it doing away with the building? If it's doing away with the building, that's one thing, and to me, that's fairly significantly different than saying, you know, nobody should buy this place.
Yeah.
Whereas if, you know, so if they could buy it and do a lot of internal.
remodel,
Remodel, yeah.
And that wouldn't, this moratorium wouldn't be intended to affect kind of interior demo and reno permits at all. So, and we can clarify that, that's actually a really good point, right? Like, somebody pulls a demo permit to tear down all the interior walls, we would not issue that. It would just be for the full demolition of the
That's
building.
better.
And it probably should say a demolition that includes exterior walls, maybe something to that effect.
Yeah, that might soften it.
Okay.
It's a good call.
Let's make this as big as possible, say like. You know, demolition of exterior architecture, just like, what does that mean? Is that windows? So probably Boulder got themselves in this problem.
Yeah,
Which is silly, is that you can't replace a window in an historic home. You need to put a storm window over it to like encapsulate it, because it has historical value, it's stupid. And so there's no, probably why I've been quiet, there's no good way to do this, doesn't matter where you go to Boise, Idaho, they have problems. Has problems, Denver has problems, everybody's problems with this, because it's impossible to solve. But I don't think a moratorium is necessarily a problem, but you presented a case I was anticipating. I was like, sure, why not do a moratorium measures?
It's like, it's strong.
I agree, it's a little bit of a blunt tool, and then to your point, there's a lot of pros, like, looking forward, right? There's a lot of like pros and cons around historic preservation regulations, and I think conversation that we had a little bit with the HBC chair was, you know, do we wanna do a super light touch? Do we wanna do kind of a medium touch, maybe more like what Louisville does? Do we wanna do a heavy touch where you could actually landmark a property against the permission of the property owner, right? So there's, you know, then even moving forward, I think there's a lot of different strategies.
So could it be baked into the design guidelines such that if the building is deemed to have historic value during that review, parts of it would need to be maintained? Basically, like not allowing someone to have a demo permit if they haven't passed their design intent for the design guidelines first.
Absolutely, I don't think we, that,
Not a moratorium, that gives us a lot of power to say, we like this building, we don't want to rip it down and build this instead.
yeah, and I definitely agree that, you know, preserving our historic buildings is a town goal. We need to strengthen our design standards related to certain properties in town, right? So yes, I think that could be, and even if just this discussion kind of prompts the town to, the board to provide direction to kind of rewrite some of these ordinances.
Well, I think it'd be worth asking Brandon, I guess, if like making a requirement to design guidelines that I don't know, a building should be deemed historical within this district defined, would that be basically a moratorium without calling it a moratorium? Cause we could vote that in like a month,
To actually designate a historic district, you mean?
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that is something we could do. I mean,
Well, we have a design guidelines apply to a district already, right?
well, and even within the historic preservation code, right, there's more regulations around changes, you know, I don't know what we call it here, certificate of appropriateness, right? Where, and I do not know our codes off the top, but that's something that, you know, related to historic preservation, I haven't administered that code yet here, but, so either whether we have it today or we should amend it to make it stronger, that's, yeah, but we could designate a historic district.
I mean, like a moratorium on a boring week makes it into the daily camera maybe, right? But like a change in a tweak in our code, no one notices or cares
Totally.
to this point. I guess that would kind of be maybe our concern. Which is mostly not really our concern, is what we develop, what we signal to developers. Owners.
Do you feel like you have
Well-
clear input from the group? We can keep going if you'd like.
Well, I
Yeah.
remember the huge pushback when we talked about creating a historic district. So for me, having that conversation again, like, yeah, let's do that instead of more.
Well, I'm not talking about creating a historic district. We already have a district design guidelines applied to, right? It's not called a historic district, it's a downtown
We
district.
don't have an overlay for that.
They don't have no-
Well, so we have two different things, right? We do not have a landmark, we do not have a historic district that's designated under
know that.
historic preservation code. We do have separate design guidelines related to our historic downtown, which are, you know, just apply to that area.
Applied to
The-
new build development, right?
Yeah, those two aren't connected, right? And so,
So I'm saying, don't even go down the route of that until we're ready.
yeah,
But just change the existing design guidelines to have like an impact review of like historical significance or something. Basically preempting the idea that something could be permitted without going through a full design. I mean, that's a terrible thing for a developer, but it's better than a moratorium.
yeah, that would be ongoing, right? We're trying to be temporary. But, you could do something like that for sure.
The PCDC had actually, prior to the development of Lions Thrive, that the design guidelines were temporary until the comp plan was completed, and then it should be revisited
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay,
to be consistent with the, Lions Thrive. And,
I got tired of telling planners, so forgot to tell you, sorry.
no, that's okay, good to know.
and, you know, so to me, it's just consistent with what we've been thinking kind of all along, it would fit within that, perspective. To revisit it and add to it, because it was very clear that those design guidelines were about as what's the word, non-directive
Non-binding.
as well. I think they're binding, they're just not directive. In other words, you can't just put your trash barrels anywhere. You have to put them, in accordance with the direction, but it should be like this. And so you know that if you do it like that, you're okay.
Mhm.
If you do it differently, then, maybe you're in trouble, and there is language that would enable the town to say, no, that's not consistent with the design guidelines, so it would at least slow things down. So the best thing for a business that wants to develop, the best thing for them to do is follow the guidelines, follow the standards. And the fact that they're not directive down to the point of, the surround for the trash has to be a certain material, and it has to swing a certain way, and it has to have a certain base floor. It gives a lot of flexibility to a builder and, prevents some unnecessary, at least some of the unnecessary expenses associated with bureaucracy, if you will.
So the historic downtown area design guidelines overlay and does include the following language. So alterations to historic buildings designated at local, state, or national level, which the context report identifies, should follow the review process requirements in our historic preservation code. Alterations to any building older than 50 years are recommended to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation in order to preserve the town's valuable historic resources. And then alterations to any building abutting historic buildings should consider compatibility with and differentiation with. And that, I mean, if you're familiar with Secretary of Interior standards, there's a lot of guidance in there about, how you differentiate new from old, and you don't try and mimic old, and so we do have some guidance, but again, I don't read that as to say I can't issue a demo permit if somebody applies and it's recommended. But to your point, any new building would have to come to you, for, any new building would have to come to you, but this would be an alteration. So I think like if it was a big enough alteration that would have to come to you, that could be a basis for denial. But it's not like strictly required, you know what I mean? But I do think you could use that as a basis for denial.
That's it, it's a basis for denial. So if the town could say, we can't give you a permit to demo this until you show us the different.
So that we checked with the town attorney on, that we can't do. We can't tie a demo permit to, that was a question we asked, like, can we say we can't issue a demo permit until we have like a development plan approved, consistent with the guidelines? And he said we would need to amend our code to connect the two. So we don't have that connection today. We can influence new construction. We can't prevent someone from taking it down.
Okay, never mind.
I know, we were hoping to connect that, because that could have solved it.
Yeah.
So we've talked through some possible workarounds that have not quite manifested.
I would say yes and no. I mean, I think the answer of like, let's just not put a moratorium in place, but actually work to either amend our code or either really just use our code to the fullest extent we have, maybe.
I mean, how quickly can we do that? Faster than 8 months?
Depends on how complex and I can write really targeted code amendments really fast. Feather banners, something
So is
like
that-
this. I would not want to write really fast.
So the synthesis of our conversation is our preference is to try to maybe amend code and slow the roll on the moratorium.
Yeah, it seems like when we have a resolution to enact a historic preservation code, we can clean up any other code that might have, been used to, deny a permit for a historical structure. So if we amend our design guidelines or amend our development code, when we do the historic preservation, hopefully whoever's cleaning it up would also strike that from the record and, yeah.
Okay, all right,
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
all right, well,
Music for our 20.
Amy and the chairs will meet on the 27th, and then the plan is for that meeting to occur, and then the board will take this back up on September 2nd.
The next meeting in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be absent.
Okay, I do not have a development application that requires public hearing. I also don't have back yet the comp plan work that's happening with all the other boards and commissions yet, so I would say it's kind of collectively up to you all if we can. And I can talk with the two of you after the meeting if there's another item we want to discuss, or if you all would prefer.
I'm also out of town, so
Sounds like maybe
go old
in
school,
2 weeks.
burning over in the meeting.
I don't have an agenda item that I know of right now that needs to come to you, so. We'll assume no meeting unless something comes up that we.
I'll do that. I'll go to Oregon tomorrow.
All right, well, I would like to motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Thanks for good meeting.
Thank you.
Really great discussion.
Great.
Yes.
Won't put their voters on no to freak out the trustees.
Oh, that's funny. Thanks for all your ideas too, and the
Yeah.
improvements every time. I really am just grateful that you all are free to offer up your ideas and suggestions, because it makes everything better. So.